Hello and welcome to this video on inflation. Inflation, what do you think of when you see this word? Well, you might think of something to do with blowing up a balloon. You'd be half right. From an economics perspective, we are thinking about things going up, but it's not balloons, we're talking about prices. In this video, we're going to look at what is meant by inflation. We're going to look at how it's calculated in the UK, and to do that, we need to be able to calculate an index. Let's start off with a definition of inflation. Inflation is a rise in the average price level. What does this mean? It means prices are going up on average across the economy, and it's normally given by a percentage. So let's think about this. This is not the price of one particular thing. We're talking about on average. So across all the goods and services made within our economy, on average, is the level of those prices going up or is it going down? If it's rising, we call that inflation and we give it as a percentage. If things are getting cheaper and the price level is falling, this is called deflation. If things are still getting more expensive, but the rate at which they're rising is decreasing, i.e. last year prices went up by 5% and this year prices are only going up by 3%, we call that disinflation. If the price level rise is slowing down. These are three important definitions. Let's make sure we've got them in our notes. So inflation. In the UK, to measure inflation, the Consumer Price Index is our first port of call. And the Consumer Price Index measures what we would call a basket of goods. That's kind of a figurative basket of goods, looking at effectively what sort of stuff do we buy and what's happening to those prices. There is a second index that also records changes in price, and that's called the Retail Price Index. But the CPI is the main one we're going to focus on. The indices are produced by the Office of National Statistics. And how's this for a job? They monitor the prices of 180,000 goods and services people typically buy, covering 700 types of products. They must have some pretty big spreadsheets. They also look at how much money people spend on each category to weight the index accordingly. And we'll come back to that weighting a little bit later on. So as we said, to be able to look at this index, the Consumer Price Index, we need to be able to calculate an index and understand what that is. Let's do that now. Right, let's talk about football tickets. Here are some average ticket prices across 4 seasons. And what I would like you to tell me is which club here has seen the fastest rise in prices. You might want to pause the video for a second and see if you can do some sort of calculation that would show you the answer. Well, one thing you could have done is create an index, and that involves setting all the figures to a base year and then looking at the percentage change between the years. So what you would have found is that across the 4 years, Arsenal's tickets have gone up by 46%, Man United's tickets have gone up by 61% in price, and Wimbledon's tickets have gone up by 50% in price. So you can get a good comparison. Which one is the best value? Obviously, it's the Mighty Dons. Let's talk about how we calculate an index like that then. An index starts in a given year and that base year is set to 0. So for example, over on the the right hand side here, we've got years, we've got the average house price in those years, and then we've got an house price index. So we're going to set our base year £200,000 price to 100. And then the following year, 2008, prices have gone up by £20,000. That's a 10% increase. So our index number would be 110. But by 2009, average house prices are £230,000. That's a 15% increase on the base year, so our index is 115. So in subsequent years, percentage increase pushed the index above 100, percentage decreases pushed the figure below 100. An index number of 102 means a 2% rise from the base year, an index number of 98 means a 2% fall. So it's a nice way to make easy comparisons about prices and whether they're going up or down, because everything is set to one particular base year number. This is an important formula to calculate it. To calculate the index number in any given period, it is the value divided by the base year value times 100. So here, 200,000 is the value, divided by the base year value, 200,000 times 100 gives you 100. 220,000 is the value, divided by the base year, 200,000 times 100, 110, and so on. What you can see down here is actually in 2011, the average house price was lower than the base year, and so our index is actually less than 100, 97.57. Okay, let's get back to inflation. As we said there, the ONS, when they're calculating the CPI, the Consumer Price Index, look at how much money people spend on each category and weight the index accordingly. Let's have a look at that. So what they will do is they will weight the prices, because let's be honest, if the price of a Ferrari goes up by a lot, that probably doesn't affect most people because we're not buying Ferraris every week. So they will look at how much money people are spending on each type of price, each type of product or service, and then weight that accordingly within the index. And we call this the shopping basket, the basket of goods, looking at the average things that people, an average household, will buy. And this basket of goods is reviewed each year. Some items are taken out and some items are brought in to make sure the CPI is reflective of people's current spending patterns. So for example, in 2013, these items were brought into the index. They started to monitor the prices of white rum, e-readers, hot chocolate, because these were becoming more popular. And they took some things out to make space. Champagne was becoming less popular, soft contact lenses, and rather randomly, round lettuces. So here is the Consumer Price Index from 2000 to 2015. Straight away, you can see the base year is 2005. That's when our values have been set to 100. And then we can see prices rising or falling from that point. So in 2006, there has been a 2.3% rise. Our index is 102.3. And remember, this is a weighted average index of all those prices, all those 180,000 prices of things, goods and services across the economy. So it gives us a good feel for whether prices are going up or going down. Generally speaking, you can see that prices tend to rise over time. Here is the rate of change between years. Again, 2005 to 2006, you can see our 2.3%. Remember, a lower inflation rate means prices rise more slowly. This is disinflation. You can see this happening throughout this period. Prices are always getting higher, but the rate at which they're getting higher is decreasing. The government aimed to keep the rate of inflation at 2%. So CPI and RPI are the two main indexes that are used to monitor the prices in the economy. The Consumer Price Index is common goods and services. The key thing here is it excludes certain things like housing costs and mortgage repayments. It also assumes a bit of product switching. It assumes that people will buy cheaper items if their incomes fall. The Retail Price Index, again, is looking at common goods and services, includes housing costs and mortgage repayments. A good way to remember that is R for repayments. Now, what are the limitations of this measure of inflation? What are the limitations of the CPI as a way of showing us what's going on with prices? Well, one of the problems is a few households are average. Not everyone buys the same basket of goods, and so everyone's experience of inflation will be slightly different. My experience of what I buy and the price changes there will be slightly different from yours and what you buy. So it's not fully representative. It might be inaccurate for a non-typical household. For example, if you don't own a car and motoring costs are included in the CPI, then that's not the rate of inflation you're going to experience. Again, spending patterns are different between people. Seeing people have very different patterns of spending than households that have children. Although the price of a product or service may rise, it might also be accompanied by an improvement in quality performance of the product. So it might be more expensive, but maybe it lasts longer. And is that really being taken into consideration? Also, the CPI is quite slow to respond to new products. They're only updated, the basket of goods is only updated once each year, and only a few items come in and out. So they may be a bit slow to catch on to trends of what people are buying. Okay, now let's move on to the effects of inflation. If prices are rising very quickly, we have high inflation, what might be the effects? Well, if you're a business making products in this country and prices are rising very quickly, it might make it more difficult for you to sell those items abroad. Secondly, let's imagine you have £1,000 in the bank, and £1,000 maybe will buy you a second-hand car costing £1,000. Now, if there is high inflation in the economy, that value of the car might be rising. The price of the car might go up, maybe to £1,500, £2,000. Your savings that used to be worth one car are now only worth half a car. So it makes it worse for savers who have money in the bank because what they can buy gets less and less because the prices of those things are rising. A flip side of that is if you owe lots of money and your wages are rising and prices are rising, the value of what you owe will be proportionately less as prices rise. If you have a fixed income, some people on pensions get paid a certain amount per month. And if prices are rising, what you can buy each month will go down. Often we have what's known as menu and shoe leather costs. And the idea behind this is menu cost, if you think prices are constantly going up very large amounts, very regularly, businesses, shops, restaurants constantly have to change their menus, changing their signs, adjusting to these new prices, and there is a cost associated with that. Prices go up. I go to my boss, I demand higher wages. But because my wages have gone up within the business, that business has to charge higher prices. But prices have gone up, so therefore I demand more wages. But because I demand more wages, it puts the price of what I make higher, and we might get into a cycle. This is known as a wage price spiral. If inflation is quite high, it's why people demand high wages, and that pushes prices further up. Okay, let's have a quick look at the effects of deflation. One of the bad points of deflation, if you expect prices to fall, that consumers postpone spending. Imagine this, you pass your driving test, you want to buy a car, you know that a car is £5,000, but you know there's deflation in the economy. Next month, the car might be £4,800. The month after that, it might be £4,500, £4,000. What is your incentive to do? Your incentive is to wait as long as possible to buy that car. So if there is deflation, consumers expect prices to go down. They postpone spending. They don't spend on non-essentials because they think the price will fall. The economy grinds to a halt. Again, the opposite of what we said earlier, debt will become worse proportionately over time if prices are going down. And we can have a similar thing as before, deflationary spiral. People don't buy, so firms cut their prices, but people expect the price to go down, so they don't buy, so firms cut their prices, and so on and so on. Let's have a look at some inflation rates from around the world. We've seen in the UK our target is 2%, and we've been somewhere between just below 0 and 5% over the last few years. Let's have a look around the world. So we can see the UK 2.3. Some countries experience incredibly high rates of inflation. Look at Zimbabwe down here. Imagine if prices did that on average every year. On the flip side, some countries have problems with deflation. This is where prices fall during the course of a year. So interesting to see some price level changes here. So UK prices, this has been the rate of inflation in the UK over a number of years. Now, what is particularly important to link price changes to is to changes in wages. If prices are going up faster than wages are rising, then people will be feeling poorer. However, if prices are rising slower than rises in wages, people will be feeling wealthier. And this relationship is quite important as to whether inflation is desirable or not, or kind of good or bad news. Remembering that the Bank of England's target for inflation is 2%. Now, some economies who get things horribly wrong might experience what's known as hyperinflation. That is extremely rapid or out of control inflation, maybe as a result of a wage price spiral. Here are some examples here of countries with hyperinflation. Some of these you might have studied, for example, the Weimar Republic in Germany, where they experienced 29,000% inflation per month. Crazy numbers. Look at this one down here. Very, very high rates of inflation. Okay, before we finish off, some key terms: consumer price index, deflation, disinflation, hyperinflation, and the inflation rate. Let's check we've got these in our notes. So, to wrap up, in this video we've looked at what is meant by inflation, how inflation is calculated in the UK, and to do that we should be comfortable with calculating an index.